Well, joining me now to talk more about Secretary Hagel's visit to the Middle East is former U.S. State Department Assistant Secretary P.J. Crowley. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Defense Secretary Hagel is on this week-long visit to the Middle East. He's now in Israel. He's talking to Israelis. What would be the message he would be taking to these Israelis, seeing that this comes at the same time as there's a big arms deal going with Israel?
Well, you have many common challenges in the Middle East that affect Israel, affect the United States, and the region. He'll also be going to Egypt, and obviously Israeli-Egyptian relations in light of the transition that's underway in Egypt is very important. Next door in Jordan, you have hundreds of thousands of refugees from the Syrian crisis. And obviously, in the context of Israel, you've seen the conflict in Syria come ever closer to the Israeli border. And of course, overriding all of those is the situation with respect to Iran.
Well, I mean, you mentioned some important areas of conflict there. Syria, Iran, there's also, Israel concerned about its own security from other areas as well. In a sense, is this visit something of an attempt by Secretary Hagel to show the Israelis that he is sympathetic to their security concerns? Because if you remember, during his confirmation hearings, he took a bit of a roasting from senators who felt that he just wasn't showing enough concern for Israel.
Absolutely, but I think we separate, politics and strategy. The reality is that the strategic cooperation between the United States and Israel has actually never been better. From the Iron Dome that proved itself in the recent conflict, with Gaza, and so the United States remains committed to assure Israeli security, and it's that confidence in Israeli security that the United States hopes will push the Israelis back into formal negotiations with the Palestinians.
There's also the arms deal in the works right now. It's been made public, the arms deal between the United States and Israel. Is that to some extent a signal to Iran that the military option is still very much on the table?
Well, the military option is on the table, but this is a decades-long process of cooperation. The United States is committed to make sure that Israel maintains its qualitative military edge in the region, and so I would put this in that kind of context. This is another in a series of arrangements to make sure that the Israelis have the security cooperation and resources they need.
Let's move on to another issue now, and that is Secretary of State John Kerry's announcement that aid to Syrian rebels will be doubled. But I guess the United States is going to have to be very careful about where that aid goes, because there are groups in Syria, rebel groups, which are not sympathetic to U.S. interests, and there are groups which are more moderate.
Sure.
How does it manage to control its influence?
Well, first of all, this is non-lethal assistance.
Right.
And that's a distinction between the United States and other countries in the region, some of which are providing weapons to the Syrian opposition. And you're right that part of this is political, making sure that there's unity between the political opposition, the military opposition, and making sure that together those who might eventually replace the Assad regime are able to represent all of Syria, not just one element.
And I'm just wondering to what extent the U.S. would get involved in that. And I'm asking that question against the background that Israel has also expressed deep concerns that it is scared, or at least it's concerned, that heavy weapons, Syrian heavy weapons, or even chemical weapons could get into the hands of some of these rebels.
Well, sure. And obviously, in recent days, there are also reports of perhaps that the Syrian government has used chemical weapons, in its battle against the Syrian opposition, which is a concern and pushes Syria closer to a red line that President Obama has drawn. If there's evidence of the use of chemical weapons, the president has said that changes U.S. calculations in terms of the danger posed by this conflict.
P.J. Crowley, as always, thanks for joining us.
All right, Anna.